And obviously get my kids ready for the homeschooling. I share that between me and my wife. So like
I was going to ask.
Like my wife tends to take the younger two, the older one tends to be with me. And we'll just go over, homeschooling work and stuff like that.
Who gives you that? Are you given like a what is it called? A curriculum or something?
I follow British national curriculum, but I just adapt it to what I want my kids to do. So like,
is there any like? Sorry to interrupt. Is there any like rules or anything, or you just can do it?
You kind of make your own rules, but you have to fit into the system in the end.
Okay.
So in the end, they have to do, and the rule in the UK is you have to give your children an education.
Okay.
But it doesn't specify what kind. So you could, teach your children woodwork, and that would be classed as giving them an education. Like you don't have to put them through GCSEs. You just have to give them an education. But me, I want my kids to do GCSEs because it's kind of accepted standard. It's important for, later on in life. So at the end, my goal is that my kids should go and sit the GCSE exams as external candidates, in a school in the UK. They just come for exam time. So to do that, I need to make sure that I'm relatively tracking, like roughly tracking the national curriculum. So it's a different way. With the younger kids, what I tend to do is I just have some good websites that we go to and we print worksheets and we buy some, small, like thin books, and they do exercises and things. But with my older son now, as he's getting closer towards GCSE time, he's in year 8 right now. I'm obviously like, now I buy him the same textbooks they teach in schools.
Okay.
And we go through those textbooks. We go through practice questions and things like that. But the nice thing about homeschooling is it works around you. You can be as flexible as, and you can be, you can do whatever you want. So I add in there Islamic studies, Quran, Arabic. I take stuff out of the national curriculum that I don't particularly want him to do.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Would you recommend homeschooling, especially for people in the UK now? Is that something that you would recommend considering? My sister-in-law just graduated as a teacher. And she was telling me about the stuff in the curriculum, and it's insane. Like some of the stuff they have to teach, even primary schools now. They have to teach in primary schools about like sex education in detail, and they have to be fair with all of the sexualities.
But that's not part of the examined curriculum.
Right.
Like you don't need to know that to sit a GCSE.
Sure.
That's part of what they have to do in school, but it's not part of the examined curriculum. Like, so it's part of the guidelines that Ofsted give to schools. So as a homeschool, you don't need to do it.
So homeschooling is something you'd actively recommend?
I think it's one of the best decisions, alhamdulillah, that I ever made for my kids.
What if a parent isn't like as educated as yourself? Oh, I suppose you could choose and stuff.
Yeah, no, you work around what you have.
Fine.
At the end of the day, people have the biggest misconceptions about homeschooling. I'll just tell you a couple. One thing people will say is no homeschooling kids are successful. We just got a message not long ago about sort of a friend of a friend who's has a child who's homeschooled who got accepted to Oxford or Cambridge University. Like this is total rubbish that homeschooled kids are not academically successful, because they do the same GCSEs as other kids do, they do the same A-levels as other kids do, and they have opportunities to go to the same universities as other kids do. So there's no reason why that child should not go to Cambridge or Yale or Harvard or whatever. That's if that's what they want to do and if that's what their parents want them to do at the end of the day.
Okay.
But on the other side, people will also say homeschool kids are socially underdeveloped, and this is the biggest pile of rubbish you will ever. I mean, this is just. I will use the word. I'll go as far as to say this is batil. This is just falsehood.
I can see. I can see in your oldest. He's very.
This is just total rubbish. If you lock a kid in a room, they're socially undeveloped. But this idea of being underdeveloped. You know what? The kids don't go outside. They don't mix with people. They don't go to parks and play with other kids. They don't go to, Islamic centers and Quran classes and whatever. At the end of the day, they mix with other people. People come to the house. They go to other people's houses. It's complete rubbish to say that homeschooled kids are socially underdeveloped. And that's just said by people who basically have no idea what homeschooling is. Or they've judged it on cases where there are other factors. Like the kid hasn't been homeschooled, they've just been not sent to school. There's a difference. Right, yeah. Big difference. Homeschooled, you're giving your kids an active education. Just kept them at home, that's not that's not homeschooling. That's just, keeping your kids at home and not sending them to school. They may call it homeschooling, but that's not homeschooling. But one of the things I love about homeschooling is, and one of the things I'm so passionate about is a couple of things. Number one, Islamically, it's like the difference between the heavens and the earth. It's a massive difference, because now you're in control of your kids' education, what they learn, what they don't, and you have a degree of control over their social interaction as well. Like, you can kind of, you're not forced for them to be in a class with a bully who's beating them up, or with a person who's telling them to smoke or take drugs or whatever. You have a more control over that. And they develop a much more mature and a much more, sort of sensible sort of character, I think, depending on, the kind of people you introduce them to. Obviously kids their age and stuff, but you're not like putting them in that pot, which is, school. And as you get older, as you start going to high school, what are the kids in high school doing?
Yeah,
if you can save your kids from that,
yeah.
Wallahi, and you save them. Well, even if they end up ignorant and they end up just, like on minimum wage at the lowest of the low, doing like the most menial job, wallahi, and they go to Jannah, it's worth it. That's one thing. But also, what's great is building a relationship with your kids, because you see your kids it's not like you send your kids to school and like pack my kids off and like someone else do the job. It's like, I know what my kids are studying, I know what they're going through, I know what they're feeling, I know the good things, the bad things, the worries, the fitan, because you're like a part of it. You're an active part of it, and so it builds a bond with your kids. And the kids love it as well, because we try to give them everything they would have in school, from trips to saves you loads of money as well. But from trips to projects and things like that. The only thing that's a little difficult is working in group work.
Okay.
Because obviously, if you don't have more than one child at home who's homeschooled, it's a little, group work can be a little bit, you have to kind of work around it. Either go to a homeschooling group and do work with a few kids in a group or something like that. But I've not found it, and I've found academically, like generally homeschooled kids academically, if they're well schooled, they're far better than kids in regular schools as a general rule. I mean, obviously there are some really intelligent kids in regular schools, but as a general rule, homeschooling, you got one-to-one tuition.
Yeah.
It's there's nothing to replace that. And also, as a parent, it gives you the motivation to learn as well.
That's very true.
I think up to GCSE, most people wouldn't struggle, at least primary. Almost no parent would struggle to teach their kids up to primary level. Almost no parent would struggle to teach their kids up to like year 6. Year 7, year 8, year 9, 10, 11, if the parent is themselves, has themselves done GCSEs and A levels, then they probably wouldn't struggle to teach, from year 7 to 11 either. And then by then you can think about sending your kids to a school, doing part-time, doing distance learning. There's a lot of options,
right.
A lot of things to think about. And I'm not against schools either. Like, I'm not in the sense that I would say never ever send your kid to school. Every Muslim parent must homeschool their child, because it works for some people, and some people it's difficult, depending on, both parents might work. So it's difficult. But I believe that homeschooling should play a much bigger role than people maybe would think that it should.
Right.